Yeah, good day. Goldfields doesn't have a consumer base. We sell to the nasty international banks. They buy our gold bars, they put it in their vault, and there it stays forever. And so we have about 9, 10 banks we sell to, and effectively know our business. We don't have to market ourselves. So that's reputational issues. I'm going to come here from a bit of a more of a hard-nosed business perspective, and maybe you find it abhorrent, but let me just give you the thinking where I come from. First of all, would we do CSI if there's no one around to know that we're doing it? Yes, we would. And it's not because it's morally the right thing to do. Clearly it is. First of all, it's become compliance and a regulatory issue, first and foremost. You all know about the BE mining charter gives you a very specific target. 3% of your after-tax profit has to be devoted to sustainable development projects. In many countries where we operate in, Philippines, Peru, Ghana, an FP is now an essential. It's a free prior indigenous people's consent. So you actually have to get your community to sign off on your mining license. Otherwise, you have no chance to get it. So these are basic regulatory requirements why we're doing it. Mines are often also the only game in town. So if we don't, and I disagree with you, we have to come in where government fails. And unfortunately, many of the countries that we operate in, particularly local government, is failing dismally. So we do have to step in. We do have to provide the roads that give us access to our mines, but also gives the parents access to the schools. We have to, we run, how many? 4 health clinics in the country, 2 hospitals in South Africa, simply because our employees' children need to go to some reliable hospital they can go to. Schools, 7 schools around the country. So these are you actually have to step in to provide the infrastructure. And most importantly, we do it if it makes business sense to do it. And if you ask me to go and fund a fertilizer training project in rural Limpopo, I would say no. It has no relevance. It's a good thing to do. It would improve productivity on farms, but it has no benefit, indirect or direct, to us. Come to me and ask us to spend school, build a school, employ more teachers at a local school. Yes, we would do. One of our best, my view, sponsorships, we sponsor the WITS Mining School and the WITS Mining Engineering Faculty Library. It's a lot of money we spend on it. We haven't had one bit of publicity on it, but it produces the skills we need in our industry. So it's a good thing to do. We would do that without any publicity. But importantly, we want publicity. And there are some very, very practical reasons why we want it and why we push it. And being a former journalist, I try to tell my board of directors, look, you invite journalists to school, it won't be your front page lead. But then once in a while, MTN or Vodacom give a page 3 story about how they fund this project, and you get the questions, why don't you do it? So there are no recipes for success, but I think it is important to get some kind of recognition for your projects. Firstly, what we call is a social license to operate. I think most resource companies, big business, industrial companies, rely on the community now to operate. We've neighboring mines in Peru where we operate had to shut down their mine for 6 months because they apparently abused the water in the dams that serve the community. You can't do that anymore. Take it a step further. If you don't have the community on your side, if they don't see practical socio-economic benefits, apart from the jobs you offer them, they are very, very able to make your life extremely difficult. They can block roads. They can convince, most importantly, they convince the government to make your renewal of your mining license extremely difficult. So yes, you do want that publicity to convince the community that you are doing the right thing, apart from the practical action. Resource nationalism is a worldwide trend at the moment. More and more governments in commodity countries want a greater share of the mineral wealth, and rightly so. We're seeing it in this country. The most taxes are being raised, BE regulation is being tighter in the most extreme form, and thank goodness he's now farming in the Limpopo. Nationalization is the extreme form of that. So luckily it's not at the moment an issue anymore. But so we want to convince the governments that we are giving back more than we're taking out. And responsible mining is it these days. You have to make sure that the communities and that the government knows about it, that you're offering more than just jobs and paying taxes, that you're buying schools, you're training people, you're supporting community initiatives, you're doing local economic development. Finally, I think what we also need to bear in mind that we're doing it because there are 2 more things. we want to get the best skills. It's a reality these days that the best skills, the best university graduates pick their jobs. We are in a world, particularly in the commodity industry, students leave Wits University degree, they get an offer from Canada, Australia, from the US, from South Africa. They can pick their jobs. So you want to make sure that, and students these days look beyond what their paycheck is. Clearly that's important, but they also want to know that they work for a company that is a good corporate citizen, that is doing good. And you only get that message out by publicizing your CSI work, your sustainable development work. So skills attraction, skills retention. I, for my sins, worked, and I worked with Trilog at ArcelorMittal for a year. It was a very interesting experience, but when day in, day out, you get hammered for apparently monopolizing steel prices, for not treating your community well, and you get hammered not just by the media, by your friends at Abrai who complain about the price of steel they use for their building, you tend to get very, very negative, and you tend to get and you take the next best job offer that comes along, which wasn't the reason why I left. But anyway, so, and then I think finally, fourth point I want to make, why it is important to get some publicity, some reputational benefit for your sustainable development program, is that investors are starting to notice. It used to be the case that investors just looked at your bottom line. Do you produce enough gold? Do you produce enough widgets? Do you produce enough goods to sell to markets? It's gone beyond that. In South Africa, all the hard-nosed investors, they look at the bottom line first and foremost, but we find more and more that investors are looking at your performance in terms of CSI, in terms of environment, in terms of governance. We participate, and I bet many of you, corporate citizens, GRI, UN, United Nations Global Compact, SRI. You have to have a good story to tell, otherwise you fail on that and you're starting to lose investors that care about these things.
Great.